Hey, everybody, and welcome. It is a Thursday. You know what that means? Thursday night NFL football as well as college football. So we have all kinds of stuff going on tonight. And Matthew, what do you think about tonight's NFL game?
I'll be honest with you, Jim. I've been so focused on college football this week, I haven't even looked to see who's playing.
That's a good question. Why don't I look for us and see? Let's see. What do we got? Yeah.
We've got the Raiders and the Broncos.
Well, actually, that's a pretty good game for.
Raiders and
Yeah, that's a pretty good one for the division, actually. When you look at
hmm
it, you know, I think that the Broncos have been undersold, basically.
yeah, they've kind of flown under the radar. Some of their wins haven't been the most impressive wins in the world.
Hmm.
So they're. I think people had a reasonable doubt when they were pulling out some close wins in the season. Kind of thought maybe it wouldn't hold up. It has held up for Denver thus far. But for the Raiders, they got Brock Bowers back last week.
Hmm.
And what was heartbreaking loss in overtime for them on a 2-point conversion. But Brock Bowers
Right.
had 3 touchdowns, and I'll tell you what, as someone who drafted Brock Bowers in the first round in their fantasy league, that made me very happy.
I bet it did. I bet it did. The it's always good to have those kind of things pop up in the right times, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's really nice.
So that's always fun. The I think the thing here tonight, and I'm happy for him, is Bo Nix. I mean, I'm happy to see Bo Nix. He's
Oh
not
yeah,
flashy. He's not the Jaden Daniels or the Caleb Williams or that type of ability quarterback. He just wins.
he does. And I don't know what it is, but there is something to like him flying under the radar, and I don't know why he flies under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
They they made the playoffs last season, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
I believe they did. So he made the playoffs year one. Same thing as Jaden Daniels. Maybe people didn't. To be honest with you, I kind of get a similar feel of this team, the same way I kind of felt about Tampa Bay in their first year with Baker
With
Mayfield.
Baker.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like people kind of just expect it not to work out, and
Mm-hmm.
it just keeps working, and just keeps working, and and I have no reason to think that it's not going to keep working. It's not like the Raiders have been great this year. I mean, they're two
Mm-hmm.
and six. They're finding ways to lose football games. Talking about
Mm-hmm.
grabbing defeat from the jaws of victory. They've done that a couple times this year.
Right.
It seems like so. They have their work cut out for them. They're at home. Their defense is obviously really solid, and Geno Smith is prone to
Mm-hmm.
making his mistakes. So I think this sets up for Denver here well to continue. They're 4-0 at home right now,
Mm-hmm.
and the Raiders are 1-3 away. So this sets up really good for Denver tonight.
I think one of the things that's impressed me about Bo Nix is that Sean Payton actually got a quarterback who can play in his system,
hmm
and there's a lot of parallels to Drew Brees and to Bo Nix. Bo's a little bigger than Sean, but
hmm
uh, not Sean. Yeah, he's definitely bigger than Sean, but
Yeah.
bigger than Philip Rivers. And I think the way he purports himself. I mean, he can throw the deep ball and all that. So when Sean had him start, you figured, okay, he's starting right off the bat, and he saw something there that you know that was Drew Brees esque that he couldn't get out of the quarterbacks he's had there.
Yeah, and he has a different level of athleticism to him
Mhm.
than Drew Brees had, but really when he got there, he had Russell Wilson, and I think he expected some level of athleticism out of Russell Wilson, and he
Right.
didn't get that. And I think that was part of the reason that their offense was just so stagnant and during Russell's time there in Denver is you kind of thought that you were going to get some of that mobile aspect, and you didn't. And since Bo Nix has been there, they've won.
Hmm.
They won when Sean Payton's had a quarterback that he trusts and he believes in, and is able to get some mobility out of his legs.
Yeah. The other thing too, is that despite all of the talent that Russell Wilson has, Russell Wilson is not a good pocket passer.
No, no, he made his living with his ability to create up there in Seattle.
Mm-hmm. And also, running outside the pocket and throwing downfield. It was the deep ball that saved him for years.
Mm-hmm.
And Bo can throw, the short, the intermediate, and the long throws. He makes them all four throws. That's something that Russ, even as talented as Russ was in his prime, wasn't quite capable of doing. So I'm really happy for Bo. I think that here's a guy who just did his best and found a coach who appreciated what he was doing and put him in the right space.
Yeah, I think just Bo Nix's path on its own is really good. Not, I mean, just for Bo, because he was at Auburn, a place that
Mm-hmm.
he loved. His dad was the quarterback there for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
things just weren't working out at Auburn. His last season there, Gus Malzahn got fired. He hit the transfer portal, went to Oregon to team up with Dan Lanning. But things weren't going well at Auburn. He couldn't beat Georgia at Auburn. He couldn't really beat much of anybody at Auburn. It seemed like they were pretty much a perennial 7-win team when Bo Nix was there. But he goes up to Oregon, and they didn't end up breaking through because he was still there during the 4-team era. But man, they got really close to the college football playoff both
Mm-hmm.
years. He was at Oregon, and now that he's
Mm-hmm.
in Denver. He's continuing that same success he was able to build after he made that move away from Auburn and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately found a better home in Oregon.
Right. So we'll see how that plays out tonight. Over on the other side, on ESPN at 7:30, Matt Berry and Tom Luckenbill will be at Raymond James Stadium, where South Florida is going to host UTSA, and it's a big thing for South Florida because if they want to stay in the race, they got to beat UTSA.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest, UTSA is not a bad football team, and I'm happy as a South Florida fan that they're coming to South Florida and not playing in San Antonio.
Yeah, it's really a kind of an interesting set of scenarios that you have
Mm-hmm.
setting up here in the American Conference because there are 6 teams with one conference loss right now.
Right.
So I mean, you know that everybody's going to have to play somebody in the
Mm-hmm.
conference. There's no way you're going to have 6 1-loss teams at
Mm-hmm.
the end. But relatively speaking, it's a wide open race. Obviously, if you're a South Florida fan, you're rooting against Memphis the rest of the way because both of you guys carry one conference loss.
Right.
And for South Florida, that loss
It,
came
it
through
can start. It
Memphis.
can start tomorrow night with Tulane.
Yep, yep. And then so USF has a lot of it ahead of them. They play Navy next week, I believe.
Yeah.
Who Navy 5-1 in the conference as well. Um, if I remember correctly, I think North Texas actually beat Navy last week. They did. So that's
I think you're right. Yeah.
yeah. North Texas now owns the head-to-head over Navy. Memphis owns the head-to-head over
South
USF.
Florida.
I'm not sure who Tulane would hold a head-to-head against right now. Let's see. Is there anybody that has one loss on their schedule that they played? East Carolina, I think, is a one-loss team in the American. UTSA actually beat Tulane when Tulane went to UTSA
Right.
last week on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a good set of circumstances for South Florida that they get UTSA at home.
Yeah. And the irony of the Navy situation with USF is that you've got the former USF athletic director uh, now is the athletic director at Navy, and it's funny. I texted him and asked him who he was rooting for whenever they get together, and he texted me back and says, I may have to take that day off. Um, I mean, because at the end of the day, Mike Kelly did a hell of a job of building you know a, a program back up, but he's a DC guy, and I mean, to be an AD at the Naval Academy is a pretty cool job. So
Yeah.
the fact that he got that opportunity and the fact that USF was more than happy to, he had some time left on his contract. They were more than happy to just let him go because of what he had done. And they went out and picked up, a good replacement. And so they're happy with that. But I think that the American, as you say, with all those teams with just simply one loss, it's going to get real interesting real fast here. And,
Mm-hmm.
it'll lead to a championship game. Part and parcel, we'll have to pay attention out in the Big West, or Mountain West, because it's possible that they could cannibalize themselves in the league, and somebody from out in the mountain could slide in there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, San Diego State's 7-1 right now
Mm-hmm.
out there in the Mountain West. Boise State is never mind. They're 6-3 overall. So you would assume that the 6-3 overall would kind of take them out. San Diego State though 7-1, 4-0 in conference. They've handled their business thus far, and nobody has really emerged from the group of six.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like a really like someone people view as a significant contender in the college football playoff race. Like I think going into last year and the way Boise State played throughout the year, I don't think anybody expected them to beat Penn State in that Fiesta Bowl, but
Right.
everybody felt like they had a really good shot. Like there was a very clear path to victory. I'm not sure the same's going to be this way for this G6 inclusion because they're going to be the 12th seed, and just the way things are set up right now, if it were to hold pat,
Mm-hmm.
the 12th seed goes on the road to number 5, and number 5 is currently Georgia, who would then host the 12 seed.
Yeah,
at
that's
this place.
that's not that's something you want to see on your dance card.
No.
It's still the good news is you made the playoffs. The bad news you have to go to Athens to play.
Yeah. That's going to be a tough task for no matter what G5 team to ask them to go to
Mm-hmm.
Athens in mid-December.
Yep, no question about that. Um, I'm working on a piece that I think might be of interest to some people, and it has to do with what's going on in the possibility of adding teams. We're always, a lot of people are always talking about who's going to be the next team to go to the Big Ten or to the SEC. And from people I've spoken to recently at both conferences, they're not excited about adding FSU, Clemson, University of North Carolina, or Miami. They don't see the value anymore.
Yeah,
They just look at it as another mouth to feed.
and I wonder if that's not them kind of taking inventory of what these conference races look like now, because like now when I'm looking at these conference races and the way they're starting to pan out down the stretch,
Mm-hmm.
the way they panned out last year and the way they're kind of starting to pan out again this year, you feel like you have too many teams. There's not enough, and maybe I don't think this is what they were trying to attack when they moved to a 9-game conference schedule, at least in the SEC specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to the better part about the conferences being at 14 instead of 16 is those divisions and the way you had it set up. It worked out really well because you had a clear picture and you had a clear understanding. The picture gets really messy at the end of the season now, just in terms because you can have these 3-4 teams that are kind of right there hovering around the same mark at the end of the year. And now you go into when it comes down to championship Saturday on who gets in, you have a possibility to be like, well, we're doing tiebreakers now and this, that, and the other. Like it just it's odd and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, to be honest.
No, and they're still basically in a position of in a position of why why do I want to add more mouths to feed when they're not going to bring anything to the party?
Yeah, and that's the thing is you're not getting a whole lot of value. The regional reach is probably the biggest piece of value that you can add in terms of the teams that you would add if you're the Big Ten or the SEC. But for the SEC in particular, you're not getting that much of a different demographic you're diving into. You're just adding teams to add teams, try and
Mm-hmm.
add a brand. And do those brands really bring all that much value to the SEC itself? Probably not. And then for the Big Ten, is the outreach important? Because right now, if I'm the Big Ten, the way I look at it, it's like, listen, we are the national conference, and the SEC is the South.
Mm-hmm.
It's us versus them. It's one versus two. What do we gain by like going into their territory? You gain nothing really. Again, you said it, another mouth to feed. So again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I still think we're headed towards this model of two big conferences, but until we get there, I don't see any reason for these teams to need to add.
No, and and it would, from a network standpoint, I don't think the networks are going to say, well, if you add Florida State and if you're talking to the Southeastern Conference, you add Florida State and Clemson to the Southeastern Conference, and I'm Greg Sankey, I'm looking at you like you're totally insane. Like, I already have a team in Florida. I already have a team in South Carolina. I don't need either one of these teams.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, and just as bad as these two teams have not exactly, you know, lit up the sky in the past couple of years. I mean, you got Clemson basically. Clemson and Florida State play this week. Okay, it's been relegated to the ACC network. That's how far these two teams have. I mean, that was 2 years ago. That would have been a prime time Saturday night game,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's been relegated to.
Heck, you don't even have to go back that far. You go back to week probably 3 of this season.
Mm-hmm,
Clemson suffered their loss to whoever, but you're still looking at that and going that's those two brands they get together right now. Florida State's in the top 10, Clemson's
mm-hmm,
still hanging around the top 25. Like you're feeling good about that matchup. Obviously, you feel good about the direction of both those programs, and then they just both take a nosedive. I would say that they're honestly jockeying for who could have a worse season at this rate.
mm-hmm.
Clemson 3-5, Florida State 4-4. It's going to be bad on Saturday, which feels very weird to say with those two brands getting together.
Well, the funny thing is, given the way they're playing, getting to bowl eligibility could be a problem.
Yeah, and I don't worry about it in the case of Dabo Swinney. I feel like if Dabo Swinney wants to be the head coach at Clemson next year, Dabo Swinney will be the head coach at Clemson. Now, I think he may have to do that and make some concessions
Mm-hmm,
about the way he's doing things, which I know he is not a fan of at all. He is a big old stick in the mud when it comes
right.
to doing things the way they've always been done, his way, which, is an argument for maybe why they are where they are right now. But I think if he was willing to make concessions, he'll still be the head coach there, even if they don't make a bowl game. I don't think that's going to be necessarily an issue for him. Mike Norvell might be in some deep trouble
Mm-hmm.
if Florida State's willing to pay him. I'm not sure right now Florida State's willing to fork up that buyout, and I think the same thing can go for Clemson too. Like even if they want him out, I'm not sure they're going to be willing to pay Dabo Swinney $60 million to go coach somewhere else next season.
I would say, to your point, in Clemson's situation, and I know the assistant AD there pretty well, and the conversation has never been at Clemson about getting rid of Dabo Swinney. It's always been, so what do we do to add to another coordinator who can help us? It's basically, as you said a little earlier, you know, I can foresee a time, maybe not that far down the road, where Dabo just says, I've had enough, thanks very much, and I'm getting out of here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see Clemson, even if they had the money at this point, I don't see Clemson firing him. I just don't. I think that he's built a relationship with the university that is one of those relationships that they're going to let him, you know, if he has a bad year this year, they'll say, well, no problem. He'll just, ramp it back up and away we go. Um, that's not the that's not the situation at Florida State, um, where if you wanted to get creative and you wanted Mike Norvell out, you got you know, Gus Malzahn standing right beside him, as the offensive coordinator. Wouldn't be a hard sell to take Norvell out and just slide Gus Malzahn in.
Hmm. Yeah, I again, I still think that if they wanted to make that move, that would have been the move
Mm-hmm.
that you make. But I think if you were going to make that move, you probably make it a little earlier in the year at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like you're not giving Gus Malzahn much runway for showing what he may or may not have in the tank. I think if they were to make a move, that's not honestly the worst move in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If they just wanted to, bring Gus in. If Gus wants to call his own plays, he can call his own plays. If he wants to hire an offensive coordinator, let him hire an offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not saying that's a long-term fix necessarily for Florida State because I
Yep.
know I know how Florida State the people and the fans think of themselves in that job, and it is a very good job. But you also have to have some realism about the way your finances are, and if they made that move and they had those finances in that area, it's okay. Do you keep Gus or do you just bail on NIL here because you're not going to be able to go fully in on a coaching staff and a roster financially if you did fire Mike Norvell.
Right. And I think that, to your point, I do think that would be a Gus would be a placeholder, for lack of a better way of putting it. Um, he's not a bad, you know, second banana there, and
Mhm.
I think Gus would step in, do a really fine job. All of what Norval's put together up there, he understands it. He knows it. You wouldn't have to bring somebody in who would have to, retool the entire department. And the only thing you would be actually getting rid of is, the guy who Florida State fans blame for, pretty much everything that has happened in Tallahassee, short of some robberies from 7-Eleven stores. So
Mhm.
he's not the favorite fan. The fans are not his friends anymore in Tallahassee.
Yeah, which I don't really know why. I feel like they took Tommy Castellanos because he was supposed to fit the mold of
Mm-hmm.
what Gus Malzahn wanted to do, and he did. He does fit the mold of what Gus Malzahn wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but he just hasn't been a very good thrower of the football, all things
Mm-hmm.
considered. He's done decently well in the deep ball, but his accuracy hasn't been anywhere near consistent. Same with his passing yardage, just average per game. It just hadn't been where you really want it to be if you're a Florida State fan. So they, to be honest with you, they didn't miss this year as bad as they missed last year, but it still wasn't a hit in the portal at quarterback. And the way that Mike Norvell has built that program
Mm-hmm.
is very dependent on the transfer portal and whether or not they hit year in and
Right.
year out.
Yeah, and you know the team that the SEC really, I'm not going to say coveted because they don't need anybody, but somebody they really took a look at was Carolina. They thought, Carolina's on the upswing here. We're not in North Carolina. Um, it's they're right there, smack in the middle of our, in the middle of our footprint. But I had a guy in the at the SEC office tell me that you know the whole Belichick circus has not helped. It's given the SEC a lot of pause as to what the hell is going to happen at UNC over the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're
Yeah.
trying desperately to to work that out, I have no idea.
Well, I think US or UNC had this grand idea of Bill Belichick coming in and maybe not expecting necessarily a playoff out of him, but expecting an uptick in recruiting, a much more stable infrastructure to build off of in his couple years that he was contracted to be there, and then again in his contract it's set to get handed over to Steve after his contract was up. Well, none
Right.
of that happened now. That's the issue. Is they invested money, you know, they invested their time in this plan, this idea that felt like a guarantee. I mean, this is a guy who won 5 Super Bowls. You know, he was one of the greatest coaches in the NFL, if not the greatest coach in the
Right.
NFL. And he just came in and he's been a dud so far. And I mean, you can't game plan that. You spend $4 million on a quarterback. You can't game plan that quarterback's going to come out there and be a dud for you too. So they made their investments. Their investments didn't hit. So now they do have a problem because what they had set up, it, again, seemingly logical decision, setting up their future, it's fallen to pieces now. I wonder if they're still going to do something along the lines of Steve Belichick taking over after Bill leaves. I find it hard to believe that they would.
Yeah, I think. Look, does it, when you have a Hall of Fame coach come and say, you know what, I would really like to coach at the college level. But then if you look at the contract, the way the contract was written, he had a 1 year buyout if there was an NFL team that wanted him.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like the whole thing from day one didn't smell right, right? You know, it's like I really want to be here, but unless somebody else wants me in the NFL, then I'm going. Um, I agree that the concept, the basically the theory of the case was okay. I'm gonna get out of here when I leave, and we'll have some success, and then my son will pop in, and bing, it'll be a great transition from the greatest NFL coach of all time to the son of the greatest coach of in the NFL of all time.
Yeah.
But when you put in the clause in the contract that you can get out of it pretty much anytime you want to, if somebody from the NFL comes calling, I'm not so certain that was the brightest idea that Bubba Cunningham and the people at UNC's ever made.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably pretty safe to say. Again, you can't fault them for the thinking.
No, no.
Can't fault them for the thinking, but it did already. I mean, you had people taking bets, this past offseason and said, well, how long does Bill last? Does he actually make it to the season? So you have all these people talking about how he's already got one eye on the NFL, and I think in fairness, that was what he wanted.
Yeah.
People in the NFL didn't hire him for a reason, though, is what we're finding out through all of the different reporting. And I will say it's mainly been Pablo Torre that's been really kind of digging into this UNC situation and just how much of a seemingly like a high school drama fest they got going on there, kind of behind the scenes between Michael Lombardi and Jordan Hudson, his girlfriend, again allegedly. So if all that stuff is true, which the way things have gone, you would almost have to assume that it is. You'd have to take the reporter's word for it. So it's been an issue, and again, I think part of it is on Bubba Cunningham, and the higher ups at UNC to not have taken some inventory, because Bill Belichick did some interviews in the NFL.
Yeah.
Did they not call those teams and like get thoughts as to why he didn't end up in these places? I mean, the Falcons hired Raheem Morris over him. Raheem Morris is 29 and 42 or 45, somewhere in there, as a head coach. He's not been good. He was better than Bill Belichick, who's won 5 Super Bowls. I wonder why that was. It was probably something in the hiring process.
I think and this is from conversations I've had with some people in the league about Bill, and that is Bill has become, I mean, Bill's 73 years old. Okay. Same age as Saban. Nick decided, you know what, this whole portal thing and this, recruiting people 3 times, that's not right.
Hey, Jim, really quickly,
sure.
And then I'll let you get right back to it.
Go ahead.
According to the people on LSU's message boards, Nick Saban will be announced as head coach here shortly in the next week or so, according to people on LSU message boards. Yes.
That Saban's going back to LSU.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. What people come up with on message boards.
Yeah, if that happens, I'm pretty sure that Bryant Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa will take down that sign about Nick Saban Field real quick.
Yeah,
Um,
they might cover up his statue while he's back coaching.
they'll put it on a flatbed and take it over to Baton Rouge.
Hmm.
Um, I, I don't see an upside there. I mean, we'll get back to Belichick in a minute, but where's the upside? He walks out head high, great career, almost a storybook ending because he came close a couple times to another championship on his way out the door. Um, I don't see the upside there. I just don't. Financially, he's set. He's got a gig on with ESPN that's fine. Uh, I just there's I mean, I realize that people sometimes, especially in sports, can't possibly, they want to be there as long as they can, and if you ask most players who've retired when they should have retired, they'll usually tell you 2 years before they retired, um, because they basically just couldn't give it up. Um, I just For him to go back to LSU, you know, man, that would just. I'm not saying that the message boards are wrong. I'm just saying it would not make any bloody sense at all.
No, you don't. I mean, it doesn't. It just doesn't. The whole idea of it is one that I understand from the LSU side, but one that I still wouldn't understand from Nick Saban's side. Because anything that's been talked about in a potential Nick Saban return is they always bring up he's going to come in and he's going to be here. He's like a stopgap. They talk about it for like 2 years, which, again, short term contract, that's what you'd expect at his age if he actually worked to get back into coaching.
Right.
But why? Why would you? Does he love LSU that much that he's just willing to go right the ship for them? I mean, that's really the only reason why he would do it, in my eyes.
Yeah, but here's where it gets crazy to me. You There's only one other coach at Alabama, and that's the legendary great Bear Bryant, who had the love of the fan base that he did. I mean, he can walk into any restaurant, bar, whatever you want to, in Tuscaloosa or anywhere in the state of Alabama, and never pay for a meal again.
Yeah,
You go back and do that again, only you do it at LSU, and I, I mean, you totally torch your history and your all that goodwill that you've made in all those years when you were coaching in Alabama. And
yeah,
I mean, there's no guarantee he's going to win a championship at LSU.
yeah. No, I mean there isn't. I mean, I think with the spot that LSU's at right now, not that they're devoid of talent because they aren't. Um, Still far from a complete roster. Obviously, you get Nick Saban in there, you would assume that the finances will be there or would be there in order to build a competitive roster. But I mean, even if the finances were there to build a competitive roster, that was never Nick Saban's DNA. That was never his way that he built
No,
his rosters. That, and people have pointed to it and said it's a big reason why he got out of the sport. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. He's never really said it for himself. Um, Pretty much just a bunch of unconfirmed reports. But it doesn't fit the way that he coached football. It didn't fit the way that he built culture using the transfer portal to create a roster, which would be a lot of what he was doing if he were to take that job. You can't go in there and recruit high school kids and create what he would want to create and feel like you're doing it the right way if he were to do it.
no. Um, I just I'm curious as to. I mean, look, message boards are lovely for people who want to pay attention to what's going on with a lot of people get hired and fired on message boards. Um, okay, I mean, if it's there, it's there. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? I would be stunned. I've been stunned before, but if it just, why would you? I mean, it's just why. That would be my question. Why would you do it? I mean, he could have stayed at Alabama and if that's what he wanted. But to get on the road and head out, it just doesn't make any sense. Um, but who knows? We'll find out, I guess, soon enough.
And
Um,
I will throw this on top of that is Nick Saban still has an office at Bryant Denny Stadium.
yeah, it's right down
It's
the hall from
yeah,
Caleb DeBoer. It's the same office he had when he was coach.
yeah. He still has a role at
Mhm.
Alabama. Like don't get that twisted. He helped in recruiting this past off season.
Sure.
So he's still got a role at Alabama. He still gets a little taste of his coaching over there at Alabama. So again, don't see any reason for him to make that move.
No, no, it's a bit. Well, it's an interesting concept. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, but moving back, ironically, to the Belichick thing, because he and Saban are buddies and have been for many years. Um, it's I think that a great deal of what Bill did when he was in the NFL, his system style, right, is something that doesn't now fit well in the new NFL.
Hmm.
And I think that why Bill has always been a guy and this is not a bad thing, has always relied on his coordinators.
Hmm.
He's been the CEO, and his coordinators have been out there. Not to say that he doesn't. He comes up with the game plans. He comes up with what we're going to do, how we're going to get there. Right? He understands it. But much of that input for years and years and years came from his coordinators and his players and people on that team that wanted to play for the Patriots and even took pay cuts to play for the Patriots. So you know there's that situation, and you know Bill's kind of a bit of an entitled person, right?
Hmm.
And you win as much as he has, and you get to that point where you're saying like, oh, I'll walk in here and I don't have to bring a resume. you know I'm Bill
Yeah.
Belichick. Here are my rings. What do you want? What more do you want? But the thing is, and we know this from Brady, is that Bill's problem was he never really was a good person from a standpoint of he didn't have any personal skills that the people skills that it takes to keep some of these guys on the right track.
Hmm. Yeah. So this is what I'll break this down. I got two different angles. One, I think a lot of Bill's success in the NFL and the culture that he built in New England and the do your job
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff, for as much as that was on him and his coordinators, and they did a really good job game planning week in and week out. That
Okay,
culture is
there you
there
go.
because of Tom Brady as well.
Right.
Like that is the ship that seemingly drove the culture and everything. Because again, while he was in New England, Tom Brady took pay cuts. He took smaller
Mm-hmm.
paydays in order to be able to pay the guys around him so
Right.
they can continue to win those Super Bowls. So you have that aspect of it. And then I want you to turn it around and his girlfriend that he has,
Mm-hmm.
she is now in the ear of a college football head coach.
Hmm.
I don't care what you say. I've gone through and I've watched all of the podcasts and reporting on some of this stuff, and I've seen clips. This girl is very much in his ear. Like she has a say in some stuff.
Right. Sure.
And I can tell you right now that she's 25 years old, so she's 2 years older than I am at this moment, at least numerically. I don't know how many months or whatever. If I went and I walked 10 minutes down the road and you stuck me inside of that Georgia football facility right under Kirby Smart and you said, hey, just learn, and you gave me 2 years, I can tell you one thing. I would still have no business at 25 years old being in the ear of a college football head coach. I still wouldn't know what I was doing in terms
Right.
of that. So having a 25-year-old girl from Maine who's in the ear of this head coach and is making brand decisions or whatever decisions she's making, because to be honest with you, I don't know the scope of the decisions that or what she's involved in. She could be involved in everything for all I know. So I just think all of it's just been a really bad collection. And then you've got that, and you've got on top of that, people not big fans of Michael Lombardi either, and
No,
him in that building.
no, I mean, it's one of the people who at times gets a bad rap, but deserves better is Bill Kraft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mr. Kraft basically gave Belichick what he wanted. And whatever he needed, he had. You know, if they've worked out payroll, they worked out everything that necessary. So Bill had an owner who, you know, you have Kraft. Kraft, as we've seen in numerous documentaries and other outlets, had to serve as a go between at times between Brady and Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, um, you know, if you're getting what you want and you're winning, and you know Super Bowls are coming your way and accolades are coming your way, and 5 years after you retire your first ballot Hall of Fame person into the NFL, I mean into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which is where Belichick would have been 5 years from when he quit.
Mm-hmm.
You end up going into a situation like that and say, okay, well, how do you replicate that at another NFL program or a college program? It's almost impossible. You have to have an owner who's literally willing to let you do whatever the hell you want.
You have to have that, and you also have to be able to overcome. You talked about it, his social skills. He
Right.
does not have the ability to. He does not have the ability to really connect with not only his staff, but he can't really connect. He can't really connect with the players. He can't connect with the
Mm-hmm.
staff. And if you can't connect with anybody, I mean, you're pretty much dead as a head coach already.
Mm-hmm.
Which don't think. I don't think that's what. Like you can't understand that. Like you can't assume that that's going to be the case, but it has been the case thus far for him.
Yeah. And, why I thought it was odd on the UNC side was athletic departments in college aren't like professional organizations,
No.
because the athletic director has to be just as invested in the basketball team, in the tennis team, in the golf team, as he's invested in the football team, um, and or at least look as if he's invested in all those other sports. So when you go for an answer, the AD can give you an answer, but that AD also answers to a board of regents and to a president.
Yep.
So it's the chain of command to get something done. It's not like you walk into Robert Kraft's office and say, "Bob, I need this," and he says, "Sorry, buddy, I can't give it to you." That's not that's not how it works in college. Um, and so I just it just felt to me when it was announced that there and why if he'd have gone, his dad was a coach at Navy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he had gone to the Naval Academy and taken that job, I could see that work, because you know, the kids take orders at the Naval Academy. It's part of their job. So he
Yep.
would have been able to waltz in there and kind of like have that. I mean, that would have been the best place for him to retire and coach at the same time, because all he'd have to do is coach those guys up. They're not going to, very few of them they know they're going to go to the pros, because most of them are there to go to the Navy. So if he went to Annapolis and took that job, I was thought, you know what, good on him. It gives him a chance to coach, but at the same time, you know, it's not it's not the high profile situation. If he wins, great. If he doesn't win, as long as he beats Army, everybody's excited.
Mm-hmm.
But why you would go to a program like UNC, which is a quality program, they just haven't had, football. Mac has did a good job when he was there, but there's only so many things you can do. That's still a basketball school, no matter what they try to sell on that concept. Um, so I don't know. It was just uh, a weird situation. It just didn't track for me that's where it was going to go. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But you're right about
Mm-hmm.
the 25-year-old girlfriend. I mean, that falls into the creepy status category. You
Yeah,
know,
I think not many people are fond of that relationship as a whole, and I from that perspective, there's people can say what they think. There's nothing technically wrong with it. It is what it is, but
right,
optically,
right.
it's not
Look,
fantastic
it's
for the
it's none
university.
of my business. If they're good on that, that's good for me.
Mhm.
I don't question them and I don't ask them about it. Right? It's not my job to delve into his personal life and her personal life.
Mhm.
But if her personal life and his professional life clash in one way or another, then it's fair to ask about it. So I don't know. I have no idea what why he wanted the gig, but I guess we'll find out someday.
If I were to guess, you kind of touched on it. It said Belichick is a prideful person, right?
Hmm.
I think this was probably a pride move. It was discussed, and again, those podcasts and reportings that I watched and paid attention to, that Belichick felt oldest or felt like most out of it after Brady won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, and
Hmm.
the results they had in New England were the results they had. So I think when his time in New England came, I think he wanted another stop to like kind of prove like, hey, I can still do this, and I
Hmm.
think that's probably why he ended up taking the job in UNC.
We got a question here from Kalani. Kalani, Belichick's strengths are defense and finding overlooked talent and developing talent. He took a Kent State quarterback in Edelman and turned him into a Pro Bowl wide receiver. Won a sixth round draft uh, round quarterback and one with excuse me a sixth round quarterback. UNC is improving. You know, Kalani. Let me just say this: I don't think either Matt and I are dumping on Bill Belichick.
Mm-mm.
We're not questioning his ability as a coach. What we're questioning is why is he at University of North Carolina?
Well,
Um,
also, I am going to throw this out here. The way he's improving is they're losing games in the ACC close now.
yeah,
It may be improvement from the way they were losing earlier. You're still losing games in arguably the weakest conference in football this year in
yeah,
terms of the Power Four. So it's not like, it, yeah, they're losing closer games. They're still losing.
yeah. And Kalani, look, I think if you're a North Carolina fan, you would argue that you would want someone who's going to be with the program and build that program over the next 5 years, right?
Hmm.
Bill Belichick is not going to be with that program for 5 years. I don't think when he signed the contract, he ever thought he would be with the program for 5 years.
No.
So I'm not doubting your point, which was a good point, strong, solid point. He a defensive is defense is strong point? Yeah, it is. No question about that. Can he develop players? Yeah, he can. No question about that either. The question is translating what you do in the pros to what how college is run is a whole different ballgame.
Hmm.
And because the way, as we said, that athletic departments are set up, they're not set up in the same style as a professional football organization. And
Hmm.
so while his ability to coach up talent is not the question, the question really is how long can he be committed to doing that if he's not winning and not having fun with it? Because he was
Mm-hmm.
not winning and not having fun in the NFL, which is what got him out of there.
Mm-hmm.
If he were to continue, if Brady would have left, and you just hit on the point, if Brady leaves, goes to Tampa Bay, wins the Super Bowl, Belichick doesn't make the playoffs the rest of his career post Brady.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, it's not like the roster the roster left. The roster didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If there were somebody out there to coach up and to replace Brady, even if it was, let's say that they're second to the Bills in that conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you would say, okay, fine, we'll cut him slack. The GOAT left, to go play somewhere else. Understood.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to replace a Tom Brady.
Yeah.
That takes time. Got it.
Yeah.
But don't, but at the end of the day, he didn't win. And that's what got him fired.
I am going to throw this out there is before Brady left that 2019 season.
Yeah.
That was a roster in decline.
Right.
And then after Brady left, that roster didn't get any better.
Mm-hmm.
But you have no one to blame but Bill Belichick. He was the GM in New England
Right.
while he was there. So, you can blame the decline on Brady leaving, or you can blame the decline on somebody who didn't handle the roster correctly either. Which I'm not, nor will ever be a fan of a head coach being a GM at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't make sense. They're the two biggest jobs in an organization. I think asking one person to do it is unreasonable. One person wanting to do both of them, you should know you probably aren't going to get great results from that either.
Well, the irony to all of this is the guy who was kind of forced out by Belichick is the guy who signed Brady in Tampa Bay, Jason Light.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Jason Light who helped Belichick find these players that, he needed. And for all intents and purposes, Jason had the role of what a general manager would have done without getting the title.
Mm-hmm.
And so when, Jason decided, you know what, I'd like to actually be a GM, and the Glazers gave him that opportunity, it wasn't a tough phone call for Tom Brady and Jason Light to reconnect with each other when the Glazers pulled a Robert Kraft deal and said, tell him whatever he wants, he gets.
Mm-hmm.
Including, by the way, the following year, sidelining Bruce Arians.
Yeah.
I mean, and that wasn't because I don't think Tom and Bruce didn't like each other. I just think Tom and Bruce had different philosophies on how to win. So I think under those circumstances, you got to sit back and say, okay, I got you. I see where you're coming from. But at the end of the day, it's, hang on one second. Apologies to everyone here. I forgot my alarm goes off at 4 o'clock. There we go. Anyway, that Jason was able to build around him. He brought in Gronk, which was, Brady's, security blanket. And the year after they won the Super Bowl, the entire roster re-signed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you just don't get that.
No.
And so, I think that to your point, had Jason Light been able to continue in New England as a general manager, getting the title of general manager, there's a very good chance that they wouldn't have fallen off. I mean, Jason Light grabbed, Baker Mayfield off of the scrap heap because nobody wanted him anymore, and said, wait a minute, this kid can still play. Let's take him, let's take a chance on him, give him a 1-year contract with the possibility of renewing it. And now he's, now Jason's looking like a genius.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, the stubbornness, for lack of a better way of putting it, of Belichick and his ability to not connect well with the owner and then losing didn't help um, his his exit from Foxborough. But it also didn't help him from a standpoint of the profile look around the league. Because, you can't tell me that every owner in the National Football League didn't look over at Bill Belichick and say, I wonder if he came here, what would happen? I mean,
Yeah.
he's been around the league for a long time. Don't tell me that. If you recall, Arthur Blank, he and Arthur Blank, it looked like he was headed to Atlanta.
Yeah. And again, this is all not 100% off the top of my head, so not a verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if I remember correctly in the reporting, a big reason why he didn't end up getting an NFL job after he left the Patriots was his unwillingness to part with Michael Lombardi. It was an understanding that Michael Lombardi was going to come with Bill Belichick, and that was
Mm-hmm.
something that NFL owners did not want.
Yep.
Because I mean, you go down and you watch the episode that Pablo Torre did on Michael Lombardi, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not anything that's like it's like super incriminating. Like look how awful necessarily a person Michael
Right.
Lombardi is. It's just more of he seems untrustworthy, and in the business that they're in, there's no reason to take that chance if you don't have to.
Well, I mean, there are coaches and players, for that matter, who have their guys and they want their guys in, right? And culturally, it's not a fit. So,
Hmm.
is the person so good that basically you go ahead and bend the rules, your own rules, to let them fit those people in, or do you say, you know what, I'm gonna have to take a hard pass on this?
Yep.
Um, when LeBron James, I mean, LeBron had some guys who, you know, were his guys. He
Hmm.
went to Miami in that, the wonderful ESPN thing, the decision, and he made
Hmm.
the decision to go down and work with Dwayne Wade and down there. Um, and he wasn't pleased with Eric Spoelstra as coaching the Heat. So
Hmm.
the general manager of the Heat is, of course, Pat Riley.
Hmm.
Pat's certainly coaching credentials are impeccable. Goes to Riley and says, Riles, I need you to come coach the team and get rid of Eric. Riles turned to him and said, my job is to be the general manager. His job is to coach. Your job is to play. That's about all you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Pat
Now
Riley doesn't.
he got Dan Gilbert to fire head coach,
Hmm.
uh, right off the bat when he went back to Cleveland. So it depends on the organization and what do you want this guy bad enough that you're gonna let him, whether he be a coach or a player, dictate to you how you run your organization.
Hmm. Yeah, and North Carolina was more than happy to make those accommodations for him, not only him and his staff, but for him in the long term, with
Right.
agreeing to make his son the head coach and waiting.
Mm-hmm.
So it it's it feels like the first real test. It's not only this test, but one that's less similar out there in Stanford are both kind of these test runs. It's
Mm-hmm.
something new that people are doing in college football where they hire these talked about Nick Saban, and
Right.
if he took a job he'd be a stopgap. People are hiring these stopgap head coaches. Frank Reich agreed to a 1-year deal to coach Stanford because
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Luck is the GM over there in charge of their athletics.
Right.
Um, so he's doing a favor for him, but it was a 1-year deal that he signed. Same
Right.
with Bill Belichick, and this is your first true iteration of we've hired a coach and we've hired our next coach. That's not our next coach yet. This
Right.
is the first iteration of that, and it has not worked.
No, and it probably won't.
No,
You know,
it's
it's. I remember when Joe Gibbs came back to coach Washington as a favor to Dan Snyder. When Spurrier left, he called Joe up and he said, "Joe, I need you to come here and to be our head coach." And Joe, being the kind of guy Joe is, he felt like, okay, well, I've been out of football for a while. I've been doing NASCAR. Um, if he needs me for a year or two, then I'll pop up there and see what I can do to help. He does, and it's funny. I asked him. I said, "So how you like, the job after the first year?" And Gibbs, who really, it's kind of funny. Gibbs has a sense of humor, but it's very dry. And he said to me, "I have a question for you." And I'm thinking, oh, what's he going to ask me that that I'm going to know that he doesn't know? He says, "Can the Pro Football Hall of Fame take your bust away from the building?" I said, "I don't think so." He says, "Well, thank God." He says, "Because the way I've been coaching this last year," he says, "I don't. I certainly am not a Pro Football Hall of Fame coach with this team." So even Joe knew that he took the job as a favor, and it wasn't. And he made it clear, this is not. I'm not coming back for 5 years. This is it.
mhm.
I'm coming here to help you out for 2 years, and then I'm out of here. Um, and so you do see these kind of things. And as I say, the fact that Bill Belichick won everything that he did, the fact that he was able to, you know, win more Super Bowls than any other head football coach, all of that does not go away. That is history.
Mm-mm.
That is undeniable. And his bust on Mount Rushmore of college professional coaches doesn't go away. But that's what could tarnish what it was a legacy is this crazy stuff that goes on in North Carolina. And I
Yeah.
don't know how much longer he's going to do it because Bill is not the kind of guy who A enjoy losing and B enjoys getting criticized by the media.
Nope, he does not, and he's doing both of those things currently.
Right. And I don't know, it's up to Bubba Cunningham what happens and how they choose to do it. But I'll
Hmm.
be very interested in seeing what happens in the off season, in Chapel Hill.
I will as well.
And
You
again,
would assume.
I go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say you assume that if they've made the decision to move on, it's something that they won't do until the year's over.
No, they're definitely not going to fire him in the middle of the season. That's
Hmm.
not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now,
I,
part of the deal could be that they let Bill out of the contract, make
hmm
him, an advisor, and
hmm
have his son coach.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I
Um,
I think in that way you may end up even in a better situation
mhm,
because that way you've sped up your process. I said that they don't really have like a way they don't have a clear future. If you did that this offseason, you get a clear picture of the
mhm,
future because now you've sped up your process a little bit.
mhm,
What Steve Belichick's like. And even if, year one isn't necessarily fantastic, then maybe, if he wins 6 games, which, 6 games at UNC is honestly probably good enough, um, at least for your first year.
sure.
And then you see marked improvement the second year, you can go, okay, we have a reason to keep this guy around. If you get that result year one and you get a similar result year two, you go, okay, like we don't see unless there's interior indicators, there's
Mhm,
no reason to keep him around, and that's when you can move on from this whole scenario in totality.
right. The other and final thing we'll talk about with regard to that is, you're talking about father-son situations. Um, when Shanahan took the job at Washington to coach,
Hmm.
Kyle was working for Kubiak with the Texans as
Hmm.
his OC, and you know, pretty much everybody thought, well, okay, Mike's going to coach for another couple years, and then Kyle will be the guy, that will replace him.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike and Kyle and the ownership group of the Redskins at the time, it was a messy divorce at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle ended up getting a job, and obviously he went on to the 49ers gig.
Mm-hmm.
And I think arguably he's one of the best young coaches in football.
Yeah. If only he could have figured out how to finish the job, one of the 3 opportunities he's had.
Yep. And he's and if you look down the I-5 down in Los Angeles, there's a guy who was on the same staff with him who's coaching the Rams now.
Yeah.
So those 2 guys were on the same staff.
That's what, if I remember correctly, they had a couple more. That staff, it's been fairly well chronicled, but it was loaded.
Oh yeah,
in Washington.
Yeah, the staff that Mike put together was an all-star staff of young kids. All of his coaches at that point, with the exception of maybe 2, were all young up and coming coaches. And I think Mike liked the idea of mentoring them. And, to his credit, even though they didn't win, he did take them to the playoffs one year. But at the end of the day, I mean, Mike put together a heck of a coaching staff in Washington. And, there's a legacy to that. So, I don't know.
Here it is. The official. This is just on the offensive side of the football on that Washington coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
You have the offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan, quarterback coach Matt LaFleur, wide receiver coach Mike McDaniel, and tight ends coach Sean McVay. Just your 4 of the. Now McDaniel's run into his own problems, but
right.
The 3 of them are 3 of the more successful head coaches in the league, and Mike McDaniel had his success in Miami as well.
Right. So there you go. All right, boys and girls, it's time to get out of here. Any final thoughts for Thursday?
I put out my SEC Week 11 watch guide on both Sports Talk Georgia and Sports Talk Florida. Feel free to go watch that. I think we might be due for some potential upsets, at least scares this week in the SEC.
There you go. All right. Well, then we'll keep a lookout for that. Tomorrow we'll talk about what to watch for over the weekend. There's going to be a ton of stuff there. And we might sneak in a little hot stove baseball news. You never know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's been fun. Y'all have a great day. For Matt, I'm Jim. Take care, everybody.